In this tutorial, I'll introduce you to the new Dreamweaver templates, as well as some of the design elements that you might choose to use on your pages. I'm going to, for the purpose of this training, set up an entirely new site with its own navigation, and to do that, I'm going to need a template for this site. So what I'm going to do is to copy this template here, which invites me to copy for a new template, so I'm going to do exactly that. Just use keyboard shortcuts for copy and paste. I'm going to give this a sensible name. Now my site's going to be all about belly buttons, so I'm going to call it belly buttons. And I now have a new Dreamweaver template. I'm going to go in later in this tutorial and edit that to include site navigation, but for now I can just commence work starting to build pages based upon that newly created template. So I can go up to the File menu and say New. I'll just bring this into view for you. Under the area that is about site templates, I'm going to choose this newly created template called belly buttons, and I'm going to hit create. So we now have our very first page of content. On it there are some design elements that you can choose to use or not use as you see fit, depending on the content of this page. But let me start at the top. I'm invited to give it a heading, so I will. There's areas for subheadings and content, etc. Use this stuff as you need it. So if you don't need a section, take it out. So I'm going to remove some of this stuff just by deleting it. I might put a quote in. I'm just going to put some dummy text in just for now so that you can see the process. Of course, you can put a citation in there as appropriate. There are elements here like the show hide navigational elements, but in this case I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to delete this area. I can simply highlight that and hit delete. And then a range of boxes that you can use or not, depending on what type of activities you might have with this content. For this, I'm only going to have a discussion activity, so I'm going to go through and delete other page elements. I could simply tidy some of this up. I'm going to have a discussion activity. And then I'm going to remove other elements that I don't need. So I've got an incredibly simple page, pretty uninteresting, but I'm going to save that now. I might create a new folder for this with the site name. And this is the very first page in this new site, so I'm going to give it the name of Introduction, for instance. So the process for creating pages is very similar, I would imagine, to what you do already with Dreamweaver. There's no real mystery in it. Let me just preview this for you just to show you what it looks like so far. So there's our page. Not very interesting. I can see down the side there's some navigation area. We'll be populating that later in the tutorial, but for now I'm going to continue on and build a handful of pages. I'll pause the recording at the moment. You can rejoin me in just a sec. I've continued on now to develop a handful of pages. You'll see them here in the site file. It's at that point now that we need to build the navigation that will help students navigate through that content. We do that by returning now to our template file we met briefly earlier. At the very bottom of the template file there's an area for you to place the navigation, and this is really just pointing to the files that you've created to make your site. I've started here by putting what's likely to be your first one, the introduction. I need to link that to the right page, so I can use the link feature down here, either the drag method or the file exploring method, to navigate to the particular file. So that's going to link to introduction. This is actually just a list, so as I hit return I can type in what will be the next menu item here. So I'm going to create a link to the next page. now my third menu item, again making a link. Now, oops, wrong one, that one there. The interesting thing here is that I want this to be a sub-menu. I want it to be indented from the original parent one. So I'm going to use this indent option here to place that underneath the menu ahead of it. And I'm going to do the same for this next menu option. So what I'm doing very quickly is just making an unordered list of my various pages. So that's going to point to outies, and then my final page, which is my conclusion page, I want to outdent this to be at the top of the structure again, and then highlight that, make my final link. So now I've connected together the various pages that make up this site. As I save this, it will go ahead and update all the pages that utilize that template. I'll get a little progress to say that that's happened. Okay, let's now return to our browser and see what this now looks like. I'll just hit refresh in the browser. So here we are in the browser, and a number of things have happened. Based on the navigation that we've just created in our template, the coding that makes this page work has actually done a whole range of things. First of all, the page turning navigation is now in order, and you can see that we're on page 1 of 5. And we can press this to navigate linearly through the content, forward and backwards. It knows that the home page for this site will be the first item in your navigation, so that now this home button here will actually take you always to the very first item in the left-hand navigation. And under this area where we had indented menu items, we now get our expanding and collapsing navigation system. So in that simple act of creating that list in the template and indenting certain items has built this quite complex navigational structure. In addition to that, if I resize this browser down to be more like a mobile browser would be, you'll notice now that that navigation collapses out of way, and as I press this, it expands open so that I can navigate through the content as I normally would. So there's quite a lot of smarts that live behind this page to make the process of creating that dynamic navigation very, very simple for you. One final thing you might notice is that in these areas where there is hierarchal navigation, so we've got indented items here, there's breadcrumbs that are now formed as part of our navigation structure up here, so you can see the relationship and the navigation pathway back to home, and all of that's happened automatically by the programming in the page. So that's it.